With regard to some of the questions we were talking about earlier, I guess I do want to follow up with one on where the markets appear to be heading. Your job isn't to guess the markets and guess and tell people exactly where things are going, but your models that do have all the supply demand structural dimensions to them will kind of tell us where the market tends to be moving. Obviously, something could happen around the world that would change that, but right now, where we look like we're going with the...
Yeah, so we certainly are coming down from where we were in 2014, which is pretty easy to say, given we were at record prices a year ago. But for me, it seems like there's still some downside risk out there in terms of milk prices in particular, and tougher to evaluate. So we're going to come through spring flush here in the next few months. And that certainly could weigh on prices, but I think equally important is somebody tell us what the Chinese are going to do in terms of demand for dairy products. If they turn around and start to increase their demand for dairy products, then I think as we go through the remainder of 2015, things are going to look better once we can get beyond June or July. However, if international demand for U.S. dairy products remains as weak as we've started 2015, it could be a long year for us. So a lot more downside risk, I guess, than upside potential. And I say downside risk even given that we're already at much lower prices now. I still worry about that downside risk.
Well, taking into consideration the value of the dollar, which is gained on pretty much every currency out there, our products are going to be more expensive to the other countries, even though our prices appear to be a bit lower. With regard to people ask me this all the time, and I fumble around and answer, but I want to get one from you. Is there anything in this farm bill for dairy that's going to take off the peaks and valleys that we've seen over the last however long? And for a while there, it looked like every peak was higher than the last one, and every valley was lower. And is there anything that's going to change that in your mind based on this farm bill?
Well, so I think when you look at market effects, no. We're going to continue to see periods of record low milk prices and periods of record high milk prices, and we move very quickly from one extreme to the other.
Well, you're wrong. Okay, so so I wanted to be a little bit humorous about that to say, I think that we're going to have producers more educated, and they're going to take advantage of more tools. And so I think you're actually right. We're going to see the same peaks and valleys, whether they're larger or smaller. I don't want to get into that. But I think we're going to see peaks and valleys. The difference is we're going to have people who have been able to mitigate some of those valleys, and we're going to probably not have as high peaks. In my opinion, if all this works like we're supposed to, what do you think?
Yeah, so I do think program participation could certainly affect that kind of hill and valley kind of discussion, if you will. Do I think markets can move a lot? Yes. But I think if we end up with a lot of people that are participating in the program, it's going to mute a lot of that downside, which helps ultimately on the upside. We won't cut everything off, no question. And so I often will tell producers they need to think very carefully about how everyone else participates in some of these programs. Because if everybody else is in and covers that downside period of time, and they haven't, that's the toughest outcome of all for them.
Yeah, so that's again, when we start looking at this, it's hard to gauge what people are going to do, which leads to one of the questions. You did a lot of analysis for the Hill on this farm bill. The assumptions, you have to make assumptions. Do you recall what your assumption was on participation? Was it volume? Was it amount of milk, or was it producers?
When you look back at all the work that we were doing, we were assuming roughly 70% of the milk would enroll in these programs. We know we have roughly 50% of the operations, but we don't really know yet how much milk
we
really got covered.
It could easily be 70% of the milk.
It could.
Right?
It could. It depends on what size of operation actually enrolled in the program.
And I don't know to the degree that would your analysis, if you plugged in 50% enrollment with a large majority of them at this catastrophic, would that change the results of what you looked at very much?
Probably not to large extent, but to an extent.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have gotten protection quite as quickly because looking back at our work, we would have said roughly 6 to 650 would have been the margin level. And if we have a lot of folks signed up that are just signed up at the $4 level, we wouldn't have gotten coverage quite as quickly. But I don't think it's going to make a lot of difference in the results that we were talking about.
Right.